September 29th, 1988. A Boeing 737-300, operated by São Paulo Airlines, makes its way from Belo Horizonte to Rio de Janeiro. Everything seems normal, but at around 12:15 p.m., the airplane executes a full barrel roll and drops down into a vertical nosedive at over 540 miles per hour. Maneuvers like this are supposed to be impossible for an aircraft of this size, but the pilot has run out of options. On board are 97 passengers, 7 crew members, and 1 hijacker with a new destination: the presidential palace. His plan is to turn the plane into a human missile with one target in mind: the president. Brazil, 1985. After years of popular protests, the military dictatorship finally came to an end. The Electoral College chose Tancredo Neves, a former governor promising freedom, equality, and an end to torture and persecution, as the country's new president. It was the return to democracy they had dreamed of for decades. But before taking office, Tancredo Neves was hospitalized with a tumor. He died before his inauguration. His running mate, José Sarney, a senator with ties to the old regime, became president instead. A period of instability began. Hyperinflation surpassed 400% per year. In an attempt to save the country, several economic plans were implemented. All failed, only worsening unemployment, despair, and hunger. Brazil descended into what historians will call the lost decade, and the return of the dictatorship loomed as an ever-present threat. Trapped in poverty and violence, with no path forward, Brazilians watched their dreams collapse. In the interior of Para, one of Brazil's poorest states, a 28-year-old farm laborer named Raimundo Nonato watches his life fall apart. He moves from job to job, when he can find work at all. Farm labor, construction, anything that pays. When the money comes, it barely covers food. When it doesn't, his family goes hungry. Nonato has no criminal record. Neighbors describe him as quiet, reserved, and polite. Never caused trouble, they say. But inside, he's burning. Sitting in his small home with an eviction notice on the table, Nonato watches President Sarney on television, announcing new economic measures. For Sarney, these are statistics. For Nonato, they're the reason his family is starving. He makes a decision, not just for himself, but for Brazil. For everyone, Sarney has failed. His plan is simple: hijack a plane, fly it to Brasilia, and crash it into the Planalto Palace. Kill the president. Make the country pay attention and force them to see what their policies have done. It's the only way anyone will listen. On the morning of September 29th, 1988, Nonato arrived at Confins International Airport in Belo Horizonte. At the time, security at many Brazilian airports was non-existent. No metal detectors, no X-ray machines, and connecting passengers often skipped security checks entirely. Nonato knows this and packs a .32 caliber revolver in his bag. Security waves him through without a second glance. The gun passes undetected, and Nonato boards VASP 375 at Belo Horizonte. On board are 105 people. In the cockpit, Captain Fernando Murilo de Lima e Silva, 38 years old, an ex-military pilot with over 10,000 flight hours. A calm, methodical pilot, known for his composure under pressure. Beside him sits First Officer Salvador Evangelista, experienced, respected, and married with 2 young children. At 10:42 a.m., Flight 375 departs Belo Horizonte for Rio de Janeiro. Hijackers might rely on chaos, but if you're running a business, that's the last thing you can afford. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is a complete all-in-one business platform that brings everything you do into one place. Sales, marketing, accounting, HR, inventory, project management. Whatever your team needs, Odoo has an app for it. And they all work together effortlessly. Instead of piecing together a bunch of different tools that don't talk to each other, Odoo gives you a single integrated system where everything connects. That means fewer headaches, fewer mistakes, and way more time to actually grow your business. Your first Odoo app is free, forever, with unlimited users. You can try Odoo for free today using the top link in the description, or scan the QR code on screen to get started. Thank you, Odoo, for sponsoring this video. At approximately 14,000 feet, 20 minutes after takeoff, Nonatu stands up. His hands shake. Sweat drips down his face. He reaches into his bag, pulls out the .32 caliber revolver, and tucks it into his jacket. He nonchalantly walks up to the cockpit door. Nonatu tries the handle, but it's locked. A flight attendant approaches. "Sir, you're not allowed up here. Please return to your seat." Nonatu pulls out his revolver and fires, grazing him in the ear. Confused and injured, he stumbles down the aisle, telling passengers to remain in their seats. Back at the cockpit, operating on fear and adrenaline, Nonatu fires again, and again, and again. Bullets tear through the door, barely missing Captain Murillo and First Officer Evangelista inside. "Open this door or I keep firing!" With no other choice, Murillo unlocks the door. Nonatu bursts in, points the gun directly at his face, and orders him to divert the plane to Brasilia. With no other option, Captain Murillo agrees. As they turn to their new destination, Murillo announces that the autopilot was destroyed by the gunfire. He'll have to fly manually. While his hands move across the controls, his right hand slips to the transponder. He switches it to 7500, the international code for hijacking. On the ground, Brazilian air traffic control sees the signal immediately. At Sindacta, Brazil's Air Defense Command, a radar operator stares at her screen. Transponder code 7500. Hijacking. She alerts her supervisors immediately. Within seconds, alarms sound across the control room and emergency protocols activate. VASP Flight 375 is no longer heading to Rio de Janeiro. It's turning toward Brasilia, towards the presidential palace. Back on board the aircraft, Captain Murillo tells the hijacker that he must change the flight altitude to save fuel. The flight was never meant to travel such a distance. Nonatu agrees. As Captain Murillo brings the aircraft to 37,000 feet, it triggers a radio call from Air Defense Command.
VASP 375, this is Brasilia. Please confirm the altitude change.
Murillo and Evangelista share a concerned look.
VASP 375, do you copy? Please confirm the change of altitude and speed.
Evangelista tells Nonatu that they have to confirm the change. It's protocol. But Nonatu tells them not to move.
VASP 375, this is Brasilia. Do you copy? Please confirm the change of altitude and speed.
Evangelista moves his hand toward the radio to respond, but before he has the chance, a gunshot rings out in the cockpit. When Captain Murillo turns to his right, his first officer sits motionless in his seat. First Officer Salvador Evangelista is dead. VASP 375 continues toward Brasilia. But on the ground, the Brazilian government is scrambling to respond, and the defense minister convenes an emergency meeting. At the time, Brazil had a set Air Force security protocol. In the event of any threats to public order or national security, a fighter jet takes off from Anápolis Air Force Base to escort, or, as a last resort, take down any aircraft heading towards Brasilia, even if it carried over 100 civilians inside of it. In this particular case, the takedown order was given by the President of the Republic himself. At Anápolis Air Force Base, 60 kilometers from Brasilia, the alarm sounds. A pilot sprints to his Mirage 3 fighter. His orders: intercept VASP Flight 375, assess the situation, and if necessary, shoot it down. He has less than 10 minutes. Inside Flight 375, Captain Murillo flies alone. Blood covers the instrument panel, and Nonatu stands behind him, gun pressed to his head. But Murillo is an ex-military pilot. He understands the protocols, and he knows something Nonatu doesn't. A fighter jet is coming. Minutes pass. Through the cockpit window, Murillo finally spots it. a Mirage 3 fighter pulls alongside the Boeing 737. The fighter pilot gestures, trying to communicate, pointing to his radio, signaling Murillo to respond. But Murillo can't, not with a gun to his head. The fighter jet holds formation, shadowing the Boeing. The pilot's orders are clear. If Flight 375 continues towards Brasilia, shoot it down, regardless of the 105 people on board. Nonatu stares at the fighter jet, then back at Murillo. His grip tightens on the gun, and he tells Murillo to keep flying. Murillo's eyes drop to the instrument panel. The fuel gauge, it's dropping. Fast. They were never supposed to fly this far. The flight from Belo Horizonte to Rio was meant to be 50 minutes. VASP 375 has been in the air for over an hour now, flying towards Brasilia. Murillo looks at the instrument panel. They're losing fuel and the engine is compromised. They won't make it to Brasilia. Murillo points to the fuel gauge, showing Nonatu there's no way to make it. Then he points to the navigation map. Goiânia, a nearby airport. There they could land, refuel the plane, and then continue to Brasilia, to the presidential palace. Nonatu is furious. If the plane can't make it to Brasilia, how can he show the government what they've done? How will he get anyone's attention? But ultimately, Nonatu considers the idea and finally agrees. But just as Murillo begins the descent towards Goiânia's airport, Nonatu tenses. He thinks it's a trap. Murillo is trying to land so they can storm the plane, capture him and stop his mission. Nonatu pushes the gun against the back of Murillo's head and tells him to go back towards Brasilia. Murillo's hands tighten around the yoke. His mind is racing. They don't have the fuel to reach Brasilia. A fighter jet is still on their tail, ready to shoot them down, and Nonatu refuses to listen. There's only one option left, one his years in the military had prepared him for. Murillo's hands tighten on the yoke and start to push hard to the right. Murillo is now treating this as an active combat situation. The Boeing 737-300 begins to roll before going completely inverted. This makes Nonatu fall through the cockpit door into the galley. In the cabin, passengers scream. Overhead bins pop open and bags start flying through the air. As the plane completes the barrel roll, Raimundo makes his way back to the cockpit screaming. But just as he's about to reach it, Murillo does something even crazier and pushes the yoke completely forward, sending the plane into a complete vertical nosedive. The cockpit begins shaking as the speedometer tops out at over 540 miles per hour, but the plane is going much faster. No Boeing 737-300 has ever flown at this speed, and they are not designed for complex aerial maneuvers. At this point, the plane's elevator wings begin to shake uncontrollably. If Murillo doesn't slow down, or if he levels off too quickly, the plane could fall apart. At this point, Nonatu falls completely to the back of the plane, and altitude is dropping rapidly. But at around 3,700 feet, Murillo somehow manages to level off the plane in front of Goiânia Airport and begins the most important landing of his life. But he'll have to land it smoothly enough to not blow any tires and bring it to a stop before reaching the end of the runway. Inside the cockpit, Murillo is ignoring the Boeing 737's warning systems, and in the cabin, Nonatu is desperately trying to recover. Luckily, he's been thrown around so much, he's completely out of it and unresponsive. Miraculously, Captain Murillo lands the Boeing 737-300 without blowing any tires and slows it to a halt. But this isn't over. Nonatu may be dazed and disoriented, but he's very much alive and extremely pissed off. He still has a gun as his insurance and nearly 100 passengers as his bargaining chips. On the ground, Brazil's federal police were already waiting, surrounding the aircraft as it came to a stop. But they couldn't rush in. No one knew what Nonatu would do next. One wrong move, and dozens of lives could be lost. For 5 tense hours, federal police negotiate with Nonatu, trying to end the standoff peacefully. Outside, officers set up sniper positions and move in additional teams and equipment. But patience is wearing thin. Federal police order their raid team to take positions on the outside of the airplane, ready for an infiltration and extraction at a single command. Inside the cockpit, Nonatu continues negotiations and makes his final request. He'll release the passengers and crew in exchange for another aircraft. But there's one condition. Captain Murillo must come with him to fly it. The authorities agree, hoping to buy time. Outside, the raid team pulls back, but no one believes this is truly over. Hours pass and night approaches. The exchange is ready. The airplane doors finally open, but something isn't right. Nonatu was supposed to step out with only Captain Murillo, giving snipers a clear shot. Instead, he's shielded by 3 flight attendants and the captain himself. The shot they've been waiting for is now too risky, even for the best sniper. If they miss, an innocent life could be lost. Slowly, Nonatu and the others make their way toward the replacement aircraft in a perfect circle. Still no clean shots. As they approach the stairs, Nonatu hesitates. He knows something isn't right. There has to be a trap waiting. Nonatu pokes his head into the airplane, and a shot rings out. It misses him by inches. The gunshot sends everyone into chaos. The flight attendants scatter and Nonatu's leverage disappears fast, but he refuses to go down alone. He turns his gun on Captain Murillo, who's now running, and fires. The bullet tears into Murillo's left leg. Nonatu raises his weapon again, but another shot rings out first. Nonatu drops to the floor with a bullet lodged in his abdomen. He's still alive, but barely. Police rush in, immediately arresting him. After hours of chaos, the hijacking is finally over. Nonatu and Captain Murillo are transported to the hospital in the same ambulance.